With Jedi Fallen Order's release, Respawn has basically breathed life back into EA's flagging, often contentious ownership of all things video games, or at least when it comes to Star Wars. Coming off the lukewarm reception of the remake of Battlefront to the DOA release of Battlefront 2, and amid a number of other studio closures and a series of hyped up then suddenly sucky projects across the board at EA, it's safe to assume that a little more than a bit was riding on Fallen Order's simple existence to prove the masses wrong, to allow EA to say, see, we can make games, we really can. And they did. They really truly did. EA made a Star Wars game. Well, okay, I mean, Respawn made a Star Wars game. A great game that captures the spirit of a lot of older, much beloved LucasArts games from back in the day. And I think Respawn's ownership of Fallen Order harkens back to a time and a moment in video games where studios were given the space, the resources, and the leverage they needed in order to make something memorable and fun and, in this case, true to the galaxy of Star Wars. Which is why I want to roll back the wheel of time for a minute and talk about a pair of games that Fallen Order pays homage to with every slash of Cal's lightsaber. Those games are Star Wars Jedi Knight 2 Jedi Outcast, which is a direct sequel to the previous game in the Jedi Knight series, 1997's Dark Forces 2, and, of course, the sequel to Jedi Outcast itself, Star Wars Jedi Knight Jedi Academy. I know the naming conventions for these games suck. It's just a thing. We just have to deal with it. Jedi Outcast is now notorious for its extremely well-designed lightsaber combat and its varied and upgradable Force abilities. Now, obviously, Outcast wasn't the first game to feature either of those things, but the way Raven Software was able to absolutely nail the look and feel of wielding a lightsaber, or force gripping a stormtrooper, or dueling against two reborn Dark Jedi at the same time was groundbreaking back in 2002. And a ton of work went into getting all of those things just right. Try and picture this. Raven Studios has less than 20 people working for them, and after they just finished Star Trek Voyager Elite Force in 2000, are tasked to make a Star Wars game. Originally, it was just supposed to be another Dark Forces entry with no lightsaber or Force abilities to speak of. That was the mandate from LucasArts. 3 weeks after that mandate was set, Raven creates a prototype for Jedi Outcast that becomes the basis for 2 full video games that heavily feature lightsaber combat and force powers that can be used freely at the player's discretion. And, to top it all off, development of Outcast takes only 10 months after that to complete, with Raven's developers building off the engine they worked on previously on Star Trek Voyager, which saved them a massive amount of time and allowed them to focus on asset creation, combat flow, level design, quality control, you name it. That's no small feat for any studio to pull off, though there is something to be said for how games have changed since the early 2000s. Fallen Order is especially a testament to that, with Respawn's staff of over 200 people working around the clock for years to make their game as truly great as it is. Their game is bigger, it's longer, it's vastly technically superior in every way, and it utilizes storytelling techniques and gameplay mechanics that Raven's team back in 2002 could probably only ever dream of being able to use. And yet, Jedi Outcast, and by extension Jedi Academy, still hold the standard for certain things that I adore about Star Wars games. Just focus in on the lightsaber combat for a second. According to Mike Gemelt, the gameplay designer at Raven for Jedi Outcast and Jedi Academy, much of the combat systems they programmed were based on Bushido Blade, a 1997 PS1 game made by Lightweight, who coincidentally also made the absolutely terrible Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon GBA game, which I think I played for like 10 minutes or so before I sold it back to GameStop and got literal pennies on the dollar for. Not important. Anyway, Bushido Blade featured a combat stance system wherein the player could select from a number of stances to use on any given enemy depending on their combat style, their weapon, etc. This feature is actually incredibly useful within the gameplay of Outcast and Academy because it allows you to tailor your playstyle to whatever situation you find yourself in. Are you surrounded by a group of stormtroopers? Use the short style to make quick work of them. Do you need to fight off a few Dark Jedi? Use the medium style. Are you facing a particularly tough enemy? Use the strong style for a wide, more effectively damaging swing. It's incredibly versatile and incredibly useful. All of this is available to the player at their discretion and gives the player a sense of freedom that isn't quite as apparent in Fallen Order. Listen to what Mike Amelt says about this himself.
My personal goal was to give freedom to the player. Give them as much freedom as possible. We had transition animations for every lightsaber attack to every other lightsaber attack. And I wanted the force powers to be intuitive. Once you've equipped it, you just press a button and it does what you think it does.
That intuitiveness, that ease of use of lightsaber attacks, of force abilities, that's what cemented Outcast and Academy in my mind as games to live up to if you're ever in the position of being allowed to create a new Star Wars game. And that goes doubly so for Jedi Academy with its much more numerous and varied combat scenarios and equally varied saber types and more powerful force abilities. It really is a full-on showcase for what Raven's team were doing over a decade and a half ago. I think Respawn created a really fantastic DNA for Fallen Order that's palpable when you play it. And they absolutely looked back on games like Outcast and Academy and drew from their strengths. Almost like a Jedi learning from an ancient holocron. See what I did? Star Wars thing. I did a Star Wars thing. But to be fair to Raven and Respawn, and also ignoring the massive technological leaps between the development of all three games, they are very, very different games. Fallen Order has much more in common with Sekiro and Dark Souls than it does with Bushido Blade, and that's good. Developers need to be able to pull from different sources and gain inspiration from any number of other projects in order to make the games that they envision making. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't also take inspiration from games within your own legacy. And Star Wars has such a storied legacy when it comes to video games. Respawn has proven that by combining the old with the new, something amazing can be made. Powerful, beautiful stories can be told and experienced and loved by millions of people. So don't let the past die. Remember it and move forward. Hey everyone, this is Kyle from Subpixel. If you like this video and you're still around, give us a like, give us a subscribe, give us a kiss.